I'm Keith Morris, and I'm one of the founding members of the Circle Jerks. Our guitarist, Greg Hudson, was a member of Red Cross with the McDonald Brothers, and I was the lead vocalist in a band called Black Flag. We all hung out at the same place, a Baptist church down in Hermosa Beach. We all rehearsed in the Baptist church.
Red Cross needed a new drummer. Ron had quit, and I had found Lucky.
My brother, Chet from LA's Wasted Youth, hooked me up with Greg and did a practice with Red Cross.
The McDonald Brothers didn't want Lucky in the band.
So it didn't work out that well. But a week later, Greg quit.
Greg had become frustrated with Red Cross and their lack of rehearsal.
2 days later, Keith Morris got either thrown out of or quit Black Flag.
Right around the time Keith quits Black Flag, Ron becomes the singer of Black Flag, also known as Chavo.
The situation with Black Flag was we had been banned from all of the clubs because the LAPD and the Hermosa Beach Police, had us on their most wanted list. We were rehearsing, but not going out and playing.
Sometimes he just didn't want to practice. He was like, I want to go into Hollywood. Could you guys give me a ride into Hollywood? I want to go see this gig. That's how I kind of became friends with Keith, by him hopping in my truck and getting him to ditch Black Flag practice.
So I'm standing in this hallway in the basement of the church with Greg and Lucky, thinking to myself, well, I'm a vocalist. Lucky's a drummer. Greg's a guitar player. All we need is a bass player and we could be a band.
Once again, here's my head. To the Hong Kong, taking it down, get a pineapple, getting drunk, getting it. Sky, 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 sky.
By that point, LA punk was sort of taking on its own identity, distinct from the way music that I was originally used to in Northern California. The pogoing was out into more slam.
Things started changing. More kids from the suburbs were coming out. A bunch of kids from Huntington Beach area, Orange County.
It started to get a little bit more hectic.
They were crazy. They'd be like doing the worm and doing stage dives and like starting this pit thing that we'd never seen before.
Things were getting faster, things were getting shorter, but you also have to throw into the mix. Things were getting crazier.
Gigs went from like being a hall gig, a successful hall gig of 200 or 300 people, to 5 and then 1,000 people, and the shows got bigger and bigger.
A lot of skate kids, a lot of surf kids. Reaction to the music was more aggressive.
Now, in the beginning, there was Black Flag, and there was the Tourists, who would have been Stephen McDonald, Jeffrey McDonald, Ron Reyes, Greg Hudson.
Steve was 11 when we first started. He ended up turning 12 early on into the formation of the band. But there really weren't a lot of young kids playing punk rock.
Our peers was a band called The Last, the Nolte Brothers. Even though they weren't a punk rock band, They had that energy.
Pollywog Park. Okay, that was our first show.
The Descendants would eventually come out of the church, but they were kind of a little organism of their own.
July 26, 1979, I have here framed this is the little blurb in the local rag, the Easy Reader. Eddie and the Subtitles did not get to play. They were going to headline. And we played, and like, oh, a bunch of cute kids playing kind of like fast music. But when Black Flag came on, all hell broke loose. And people started throwing watermelons and pieces of chicken and beer cans, and it kind of turned into a little riot.
We played, everybody hated us. Nobody understood what we were doing because everybody was used to hearing the top 40 bands.
They didn't get that style yet. It was too aggressive, too weird.
Well, we didn't want to play Led Zeppelin. We didn't want to play Fleetwood Mac. We didn't want to play the Doobie Brothers.
January 1980, we started practicing. Me, Lucky, Roger, and Keith.
I was living in Inglewood, and I had a garage in Inglewood, and that's where we started playing.
I thought that Keith was the best front man in LA, and I was like, I can't believe he wants to be in a band with me because I can barely play guitar.
We were putting together songs, and it happened pretty quickly.
You know, we got popular pretty quickly, probably because, Keith coming from Black Flag, me coming from Red Cross, probably more because of Keith.
We had no management. We had no plan as to what we wanted to do.
We started off just doing, the normal things that people probably do when they're, haven't played or, meeting each other for the first time, like, a Ramones song, or let's jam on some Sex Pistols tune to just loosen up.
So I go, I got this riff, dee-dee-dee-dee. And then Roger goes, well, I got this part. And Lucky's like, I'm going to play this beat over it.
I started off with this sort of staccato or syncopated mambo thing, and then Greg filled it in, and we basically, that's how Back Against the Wall was born. And I mean, we just looked at each other, and it's like, whoa, this kicks ass.
was also a time where there's a lot of fear of anything new, and a reactionary police chief, Daryl Gates, they didn't take too kindly to this punk rock thing, and occasionally they would come in and break up shows violently without provocation. If the cops didn't come, they would send the fire marshal to do the cops' dirty work. So the fire marshal would close it down, and then the kids would get pissed, and maybe someone would break something, and then it was an excuse for the cops to come in and blame the kids and beat them up and try to crush this movement, because they wiped the hippies off the face of the planet in the 60s, and these people weren't singing about peace and love. They were thinking about, fuck authority, fuck the police, fuck your parents, fuck the schools. The suburban life is, fallacy.
People would slam into the drum set, at least a few times a show. And all of a sudden I'm playing, and all of a sudden it's like, whoa, that cymbal's really close, and whoa, there's the crash cymbal coming down. And I just figured the whole idea was to just keep it going. And
it was just wild, crazy, but very exciting times. Everybody had to stay on their toes, even while they were fucked up out of their minds.
We were at Ray Pettibone, the artist house, one day, which is Greg Ginn's brother, and we were looking through this American slang dictionary from the late 60s. We saw Circle Jerk. Roger wouldn't tell his parents for a long time what the name of the band was. He was embarrassed. So I can't tell my dad that name.
I grew up in a very laid-back, surfer-friendly, tourist-friendly, beachfront community, Hermosa Beach. As open-minded as it was also very conservative. My dad was a member of the city council. He told them to go fuck themselves, and maybe that's where I get some of my anger and crazy energy.
Spontaneity, key part of it. A lot of spontaneous combustion and energy.
Just go for it kind of attitude. Like, don't just look at it and try to figure it out and try to assess it. Just jump into it, go for it.
People want to live on the edge. People want to be dancing on the razor's edge and not know what's going to happen. And that's what it was like at the shows, and that's what the music embodied.
Nobody knew what the hell they were doing back then. We were just making it up as we go along. And they go, we can do that. That's the whole thing about punk rock.
Oh, it was the blind leading the blind.
There's no division between crowd and artists, and that's what the whole punk rock thing was to me, what attracted me to it.
I'd already established myself with Black Flag, and people knew who I was. The thing with the Circle Jerks was that we had more of a pop sensibility, we had more of a rock and roll sensibility, we had a drummer that could play jazz.
Songs like Red Tape, and the whole idea that you see in so many jazz pieces of trading fours.
We were very sarcastic and very loose compared to Black Flag.
Room 13, which is basically just a bunch of paradiddles.
The Black Flag vibe was, we're going to blow things up, whereas the Circle Jerks were the guys that wanted to party and like, let's have a good time, you know, our day jobs suck and life blows, and let's just, you know, get together at night and orgy and just like make a bunch of noise and have fun.
So it was real easy for the Circle Jerks to open for the Alley Cats at the Starwood, and then 2 months later headline the Starwood.
It wasn't real rock star, quote unquote. I never thought that was the ambition of it.
You know, now we can play with the Adolescents over at the Polish Auditorium on Crenshaw Boulevard and have 1,000 people.
This was our first Starwood gig. Opened up for, Middle Class and Alley Cats. I'm sorry, I thought it was Fear. We're playing a 45-minute set, and we literally had 14 songs. We just wanted to get in, make our point, get out, and get on to the next song. The punk bands were using more of the pop formula. You know, 2.5 minutes, which is great, you know. But we wanted to take it to the next level and play twice as fast, or 4 times as fast, and shorter.
Sex album, which is a masterpiece. All of a sudden you're hearing a punk rock album, well, something that's being filed under punk rock or hardcore, whatever you want to call it, with the rhythm section is not only tight, but they've got chops. There's articulation, there's swinging. It's like syncopated. We were used to bands that could kind of thrash and smash along, and even the Bad Brains, who were so tight and so great, were not clear. And the Circle Jerks, you could hear every note.
You know, I was a hardcore drummer, and that was a big album to, you know, try to play to, and then, you know, play it on 45 and try to play along to it then. It's like, try to get super fast. It was pretty fast already, you know, that was one of the faster records I heard at the time when it came out.
That record, no doubt, had a big influence on rhythm sections. I know that Ian MacKaye was fascinated by how the Circle Jerks locked up because of that real, because there's so much power in that almost metric building of a riff.
Beverly Hills, Century City, everything's so nice and pretty. All the people look the same. Don't they know they're so damn lame? There she goes, three-piece suit, spandex pants, cowboy boots. I just don't know what I'm gonna do. I don't know what I'm gonna do. Maybe I'll have to move from Beverly Hills, Century City. Everything's so nice and pretty, and all the people, they look the same.
were no labels going to be out there putting out your music, any mainstream labels. It was all rock, metal, and or new wave.
We were at one point approached by Lisa Fancher, Frontier Records. She loved the band.
I was a big Black Flag fan, and I only saw them a couple times with Keith. Then I heard he had a new band, and I had seen Greg Hudson in Red Cross, so it was already kind of a super group in a weird way. I saw them in the Cuckoo's Nest, and they were just so insanely fast and energetic. And Keith's a great frontman. He was just so on top of it.
We went into the Group Sex recording session having played all of those songs.
I mean, in those days, there was just no support, and there was no funding for any of this. It was all kind of backroom stuff.
Produced by a guy who was never there, the Invisible Man.
Greg's father did the agreement. He was an immigration lawyer, so probably not the best agreement for all of us in the world, but it was a three-way agreement between Kerry Markoff. I think he put the money up front, and you know more on Savory Stories, but I was not there.
Our deal was done on a large paper bag filled with marijuana. That was how we got the studio time.
They used tape that was used. It was pre-recorded. Usually I think you want to use tape that hasn't been recorded on before, but Group Sex is recorded. It's like re-recorded, and so you get some of that grainy sound on the tape.
And on the original pressing, we were afraid nobody would want to buy it, so we added like 4 or 5 seconds to every song to make it seem like it was longer. And like instead of 57 seconds for a red tape, it would maybe go be like, it's a minute 4.
This herky-jerky, hour here, 2 hours there, 3 hours there, went on for maybe a couple of weeks. I'm surprised that there's any continuity to that recording session.
Private swing party Friday and Saturday. Wouldn't it be nice to have a party where the couples are friendly and mellow? A low-key atmosphere where you can explore your most sensual fantasies with other aware, sensitive couples.
With the release of Group Sex and the documentary The Decline of Western Civilization, we flew out and did a handful of dates on the East Coast.
Unfortunately, Lucky had broke his hand in a fight out front of the Starwood a couple weeks before the tour, and we were like, are we going to cancel? Are we going to postpone? We all wanted to do it, so we got Charlie Quintana from the Plugs to play and fill in while Lucky was healing. And after about a couple shows, Lucky was like, I'm not staying home and missing that. He came out, like watched the show, and then he said, fuck it, and took his cast off weeks before he was supposed to. He goes, I want to play these shows.
Yet I remember having a good time, and I remember that the shows, I thought they came off pretty good.
When it was great, it was fantastic. Playing with the Cramps, and playing with Minor Threat in Washington, D.C., and playing with the Necros and the Stimulators at Irving Plaza in New York, and playing for Cheetah Chrome at the Mud Club.
Get off my back, out of my life. Everything is built up. Take the lid off the punch. Be bright, close up. Do something else to the bone. Get off my back. Just leave me alone. Wake up tomorrow, do it again. Yes, sir. Yes, ma'am. No, sir. No, ma'am. Get so fed up of your fucking scam. Do nothing else to the bone. Get off my back. Just leave me alone.
We would collaborate a lot, you know. I'd come up with a verse and chorus, Roger would have a bridge. He'd have 2 parts. I go, what if we had this in there? And sometimes Keith would go, dun, 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 and then we'd try to figure out what he meant, and then he'd get songwriting credit as writing the music.
I think I brought in the music for Paid Vacation. I might have brought in the lyrics for Murder the Disturbed.
We were playing versions of songs that hadn't quite progressed. Like, we needed enough to play like a 20, 30-minute set at a party.
I looked at the guys in the band and I said, all of you have played in other bands. Have you written any songs? Have you written any music while you were in any of these bands that we could use in this band?
So we would play, maybe lyrics that Keith wrote to music of Red Cross.
Right there created a very tense situation because there were a lot of disgruntled people in some other bands that were accusing us of stealing their songs.
And then I just kind of ended up stealing some riffs, and but those guys at that time, so they didn't want to be in a band, so like use it.
In Black Flag, I'd written some of the lyrics, and as a lyricist or the guy who writes the words, you own half of the song. Any of the songs that we used by any of these other bands, we always figured out a way to change the shape of the song or change a tempo here and there.
And then people get bummed, and then you're accused of being rip-offs.
But at that time, I felt a bit of desperation.
What did I do to deserve this? Myself into a corner. No windows, doors are allowed. What did I do to deserve this? Running down a block alleyway. What did I do to deserve this? Running down a block alleyway. Chain links, trash cans, running away. What did I do to deserve this?
The second album is the Sophomore Jinx, is what they say, right?
The Circle Jerks had signed a deal with a division of IRS Records.
Called Faulty Products, and it was us and the Dead Kennedys, and I can't remember, DOA was on it, I believe, and it was a step above.
For better or worse, we went for a more expensive studio.
We can get you a deal at A&M Studios. Oh, great. Cool. Herb Alpert. Love Herb Alpert and the Tijuana Brass.
We weren't able to get the sound that we got from that super basic, raw sound that we got on the first album.
We had to go in there and make it in like 3 days, like done and mixed. And I remember playing these tracks thinking that they're going to be rough guitar tracks, and they ended up being D tracks. So I thought the guitar sound was thin. We rushed through it, and we weren't really quite happy the way it came out.
It didn't hit the mark at exactly the same spot.
we really wanted to tour it during the spring, and Lucky was still in law school, so the band had to make a decision. Do we replace him? Do we wait? We wanted to tour more. We knew he couldn't. We knew that day was going to come someday where he'd probably have to leave the band.
I had done the entire band while I was going to law school, which is, depending on what kind of a law student you are, either something I recommend strongly or don't recommend. For me, it worked out real well. It was a great, humorous counterbalance.
We approached Lucky, said, we're going to England to record the next record. He said, I can't go with you, I'm going to school. We said, well, we've got to replace you.
And I thought it was a little premature because we didn't really have anything set up.
And the situation with England fell through.
So I was pretty unhappy, and there was friction. So I had some outside interests, and so I was the first to go.
We replaced Lucky with a guy named John Ingram.
He was a friend of Roger's from when Roger lived in Kansas City.
So now we've replaced a really amazing drummer with just a guy who can play drums.
One of his first shows was us headlining the Santa Monica Civic, or co-headlining with the Bad Brains, and, having people chanting, "Where's Lucky? Where is Lucky? Where is Lucky?"
Pretty much locked into what I would call my dark ages. Maybe it was also the dark ages for the band, but I had become completely in love with cocaine and any white powders, any kind of white substances like that. And it was also what I would call the beerbonic plague. I was up to maybe a case and a half, 2 cases of beer a day.
We'd be leaving the hotel right as the cops were coming in, that kind of thing. Because a certain band member would get drunk and end up having to be kicked out of his room. We'd have to kick him out, and he'd have to sleep in the lobby. Keith?
Being a cocaine addict and an alcoholic, I was trying to keep up with the Seven Dwarves and trying to sit atop the Matterhorn at Disneyland. So this area, a lot of the events that took place were just, maybe I was in a blackout.
John played on the Golden Shower of Hits record. We finished writing that. We recorded it. John started playing a bunch of shows around, and he just wasn't cutting it.
He was lured out here by Roger. It's like, well, we have this position in this band. We're a really popular band. You can make a lot of money. Chances are you'll buy a house on the top of the Hollywood Hills. You'll be limoed back and forth, and you'll be surrounded by exotic dancers and, you know, whatever other party favors you choose. And it didn't happen. We weren't getting a lot of money to record. Some of us were just barely able to pay our rent.
We found out that Chuck Biscuits had just quit Black Flag, and we're like, okay, well, we can't miss this opportunity.
Roger moved from bass to guitar.
Roger decides, I don't want to play bass anymore. I'm a guitar player. I want to play guitar.
And we invited Earl Liberty from Saccharin Trust to play bass with us.
I knew Keith. Keith came from the same city I did. I knew his family. They owned a tackle shop right down the street from where I lived. I knew Keith, but I wasn't real good friends with him. But we knew each other from being in the scene, you know. I mean, everybody kind of knew each other back then.
So now all of a sudden, we have this really amazing rhythm section. Earl Liberty, Chuck Biscuits.
Chuck and I had toured with Saccharin Trust and Black Flag. We had a pretty good rapport, and I absolutely thought he was probably one of the most hardcore, most energetic drummers I had ever heard.
Boss around, in the run around, sweep your floor, lift the trash, you're the one that makes it cash. Running the can't find the fight, we'll find that hope your life. Here's just you. When you open it, you'll be through. Sip in your gap, act like a king, treat me like a human. Give me the worst job in your nap. When you're dead, I'll be glad.
Roger, as an amazing musician he is, pulled off bass player being wasted or whatever he was on, could not play guitar drunk or high on anything else.
Somewhere in this period, Roger overdoses, and we have a tour coming up. So we go out, he joins us for some shows. He's really frail, he can barely walk. He wants some kind of rock star treatment.
He wanted his own hotel room. And we're like, Roger, we only got X amount of dollars to last us from gig to gig to gig. We all have to sleep together. You know, we're going to get 2 rooms, we're going to split up, and we're just going to deal with it that way. And he was absolutely no.
Roger had become kind of a hindrance.
We all woke up the next morning, we went to go get Roger, and he was gone. Just left.
Called around all his friends in LA, they never heard from him. Like, poof, disappeared. And we were all happy. We were hoping he wasn't dead.
Finally, it got to a point where we just couldn't wait anymore. We had to get on to the next gig. If we didn't get on the road, we were going to miss it, so we left.
The shows were so much better without him. And we're like, we don't want him back. What do we do? We felt bad. We don't kick him out. He was an original guy, really integral part, but his partying was affecting the band. I mean, worse than anything that Keith was doing with his drinking or whatever.
You're not pushing the sound up. You're not making us sound any fuller.
We had this management company at the time. It kind of distracted him and got him to start working in another direction and writing songs with Jimmy McNichol, who was a former pop teen idol.
So your services are no longer necessary.
Perfume getting down. I can see it in rise of the life that of ice. I can see it in rise of the life that of ice. Happiness together, honey. No way. I see.
was a really powerful lineup with the way Chuck plays drums, with sticks as big as tree trunks, and Earl being like 6'5", and he'd take out his false teeth when he played, and he had these teeth. He had gotten into trouble with the cops. They chased him. He was an innocent bystander and got his teeth broken out because of the police.
Well, Rob Holtzman, who used to play with Suck and Trust, he used to call me Earl because I used to play basketball, and he used to call me Earl the Pearl. We were practicing down in San Pedro at the Star Theater one night, and actually the Minutemen and Black Flag both walked in at the same time, and D. Boone looks up at me and goes, "God damn, you're tall." He goes, "You're like the Statue of Liberty." He goes, "That should be your name, Earl Liberty."
Golden Shower of Hits comes out. We probably did 18 tours on that. We kind of toured that sucker to death. But all the tours were successful. And we started even to play college towns.
We're here taking a poll tonight, and we'd like to ask this gentleman, what do your parents think of this bullshit?
They love it, man. Fucking, I wish my mom and dad were here so they could see this shit.
That's beautiful. Thank you. Now get lost.
The whole new batch of energy. I mean, how could it not be? Chuck Biscuit's one of the greatest drummers. That really kicked us back up into, like, world-class contention.
My band, Minor Threat, it was the first time we ever got to open for a huge national act. Happened to be the Circle Jerks. It was the 930 Club. It was on my 16th birthday. My 16th birthday, I saw the Circle Jerks, I got my driver's license, I lost my virginity, and I met Greg Hudson. No lie, all one day. It's all been kind of downhill since then.
We were able to play with them at Cal State Northridge. It was a very large show, and we opened up for them, and that was very exciting because by that time they had been on Rodney on the Rock a number of times, and had actually played Bad Religion demo tapes on Rodney on the Rock. So it's really, if it weren't for the Circle Jerks, Bad Religion would probably never have been asked or recognized, rather, by Rodney on the Rock. And so that was always very important.
To the gentleman that ripped off the mic off the stand up here, could you please give it back? No questions asked.
Yeah, there was a little bit of change, you know. Songs like Even When the Shit Hits the Fan, it's more like a Who song. It was more in response to Should I Stay or Should I Go? I'm like, oh, that's cool. I like that open chordy thing. I want to write a song kind of like that.
The only recording that we have with Chuck Biscuits, and this is insanely ironic, is a track that we did for the Repo Man soundtrack where Greg Hudson, Earl Liberty, and Chuck Biscuits all played acoustic guitars accompanied by a drum machine. That was our acoustic version of When the Shit Hits the Fan.
The studio sent us over there to do the track on that, and we all played acoustic guitar on it, and then did the actual track, and then shot the film afterwards. So we basically lip synced that.
We had this management, and they said we shouldn't do it. We weren't getting paid enough, and we said we don't care. We're doing it anyway, and it was probably one of the best things that ever happened to the band.
People were just like, "Who are you guys?" You know, kind of thing. You know, I remember they had the lunch truck out there, and it was like, "Okay, you guys eat last," kind of thing. It was, you know, we didn't care. We could care less. It was like, fuck this shit, you know.
I met the Circle Jerks on the set of Repo Man, and I was very enthusiastic. I came up to them and I said, "Hi, I'm Kevin the Nerd." "Oh no, I'm Xander. I play Kevin the Nerd in Repo Man." And they just walked by me and didn't say a word. Grumpiest guys I had ever met.
Was it the management that got you on television?
Yeah, they got us on this show called Rock Palace on NBC.
Keith came out in, I believe, a Michael Jackson outfit, so he had the uniform with the glitter glove, and it was around that time when Michael Jackson had that album come out, so it was kind of mocking him a little bit. It was fun.
Tension was building.
Tension was building between Chuck and the band due to his, his attitude.
Chuck moved around a lot. I mean, he was with DOA, and he was with Black Flag, and he was with the Circle Jerks, and then he was with Soulja Distortion, and then he played with Danzig.
We got offered to play this party at Club Lingerie by John Doe. We were about to go on, and he's like, "I'm not doing the show." It's like, why? Because we should be getting paid for this. We're better than this.
I think Chuck could take it or leave it. But you know what? He was good enough to say that.
And I said to him, if you don't do the party, you're out of the band. And then he just lunged for me and grabbed me by the neck and tried to strangle me.
And I remember Greg just hauling off and kicking Chuck between the legs so hard that he lifted Chuck off of the ground. And, of course, Chuck was never to be seen after that.
I remember hitting that last note and just looking at the crowd and going, wow, this is it. this is the last time I'm going to do this. But, and I remember standing outside, getting into my girlfriend's car, and just looking up at the Perkins Palace and just going, wow, I can't believe this is the last time I'm going to do this. You know, but, you know, I had a great run.
We eventually had Earl leave to become a born-again Christian. I asked my friend Michael Balzery, better known in the music community as Flea from the Red Hot Chili Peppers, to play with us.
Things were changing, and, you know, everybody decided in protest to grow their hair long.
I had witnessed a band called Megadeth, and this would be the Spinal Tap version of Megadeth. Keith Clark was playing drums, and he wore a big wig and wore chains and leather pants, and Keith Clark joins. We still have Flea. That makes for a really interesting vibe.
So the fundamental rule of punk rock bass playing is something we call the downstroke derby, where all downstrokes like that. Flea enters, someone who never plays with a pick, and I've never seen anybody in my life that can downstroke with his fingers, and it's pretty amazing.
Granted, his style of playing wasn't as aggro as a guy doing a downstroke, a guy playing bass with a pick, because Flea was doing his plucking, but it was cool.
I
call comes up for Flea to do the Red Hot Chili Peppers, and it's obviously time for us to find a new bass player.
Only Xander.
He's a snake. No, that's the snake, so all he can see is...
Try it. Let's hear it.
Here's a snake, Carl. Snake.
I got the gig, I think out of like 50 bass players or something like that.
Keith Clark just said, the last guy that just auditioned is the guy that I want in the band.
Keith would like go around and saying, we got this new guy in the band, and he's a really good musician, but he's like super nerdy.
And Xander is not really a bass player. Xander is a guitar player. Xander is GIT, Guitar Institute of Technology.
But my original instrument is guitar. You know, I've been playing guitar since I was 12 years old.
GIT was basically just a noodle factory. You know, let's churn out some Eddie Van Halens.
And they asked me at the end of the audition, they said, why do you want to be in the Circle Jerks? And I said, well, I've been playing in this band down in Compton and Watts, the Juicy Bananas, for a couple of years, and I just don't think that black music is ever going to make any money. And I want to be in the Circle Jerks. I want to play punk rock for the money.
We write the Wonderful album, which was, you know, a little bit of a departure in sound, but not too much.
Yeah, I joined and we made that record Wonderful and Six, and of course our swan song, Oddities, Abnormalities, and Other Curiosities.
Six, which was our fifth album, but we called it Six just because we thought we would be clever, and we thought we would throw everybody for a loop, and people would go to the record store and they'd pick up Six and they'd go, well, where's the fifth album?
Keith Clark would bring a guitar on the road, and I would bring a guitar on the road, and you know, we were roommates, so it naturally kind of occurred that we would kind of be up jamming.
Greg would chip in here and there. I'd toss in a line here or there, or write a set of lyrics, and the Circle Jerks had almost become Keith Clark and Xander's band.
I wouldn't say that it was solely me and Keith Clark that wrote songs. I can remember sitting in Dog Shit Park with Keith Morris and writing songs across from his apartment there on like Selma and Franklin.
For everybody everywhere, this is called The Crowd. Sometimes I feel all alone. So many people, it's all a state of mind for me. Every once in a while, they all fight by what is true. It's all been spoken, it's a matter of what they want for them. It's bringing up to you, all like what I have to say. Don't matter, you all like what I have to say. Anyway, let your people know. All the world must live here. If you seem that they care about the others, they're aware of what tomorrow brings. It's a hopeless feeling, and if you fear as I do, just let me know. We can tell all the rest. Maybe it ain't my fault. You are like what I have to say. Let me know. You are like what I have to say. Anyways, let your people know. All the world must live here. To say, you are like what I have to say. Anyways, let your people know.
A lot of bands started going metal. And the whole speed metal came about, I think, as something that was a safer alternative to going to a punk rock show.
I never had experienced people jumping up on stage, you know, moshing and doing stage dives, and sometimes they would bump into you, and sometimes there'd be like 10 or 15 people on the stage at one time, like dancing around, and you know, I would be afraid they'd knock my glasses off or something like that.
We went kind of more towards the rock end, just more straight ahead rock, but without the virtuosity, because I ain't no virtuoso.
Japanese buying up our guitars, and they are beaches driving cars. Hondas, Toyotas, Subarus. Got 'em, beat 'em, got a lot to lose. Fenders, Gibson, stack 'em high, stack 'em up against the sky. Speakers, blasting the fans, make 'em wish to get it bland. It's an American heavy metal weekend. It's an American heavy metal weekend. The English sure will give them a break with the high watts and the Marshall. Made here, make no mistake, always real, never fake. Platform boots from the air, gotta raise the scare. Metal riches and the layers, US made, buyer beware. It's an American heavy metal weekend. An American heavy metal weekend. Rock it! Noise to go! Twisted Sister! Don't forget the crew, dude!
It went from like almost overnight punk rock scene to this glam metal scene, like polar opposites, where people wanted to not be rock stars. Everybody wanted to be a rock star. I wish I would have bought stock in Aquanet back then.
I went down to Nicaragua to do Alex's film Walker during the Civil War down there. I came back from Nicaragua to go on tour, a national tour with the Circle Jerks, and I got a call from Joe Strummer saying, "Hey man," he was like, "I want you to come to Russian Hill up in San Francisco and bring your Spanish guitars." I quit the Circle Jerks and joined up full time with Joe Strummer.
Keith Clark managed to bring in a couple of other bass players. A guy named Ted Pittman, who we called Piddles.
So we got Doug Carrion from Dag Nasty and Descendants to fill in on a tour.
We had Chris Poland, who was one of the guitar players in Megadeth, the Capitol Dave Mustaine Megadeth. So now there's this weird tie-in.
Joined with the Circle Jerks, and found myself at 125 pounds, strung out, locked in my apartment, seeing ghosts, and kind of losing my mind. And at that point, I made a decision to stop.
I have been sober, what they call sober. I've not touched any of that stuff for probably 23 years, 24 years. I stopped counting. I don't do it anymore.
It was almost like punk rock literally was wiped off the face of Hollywood and the world. It was just forgotten, swept under the rug as a minor footnote in rock and roll history. And then all of a sudden, one band comes out and totally kills heavy metal like Black Flag kills Ants on Contact. That would be Nirvana.
Going backside.
back even in the early days, we'd be like passing out flyers, and Keith would be drunk and just screaming, I want to destroy you! Like, you know, throwing shit at people in the streets of Hollywood and the South Bay, Orange County. And it's like, but what is that? And he goes, oh, it's a song. So, you know, 20 years later, we get around to recording it.
Circle Jerks signed with Mercury Records, and that was pretty much a disastrous situation for us.
Sweet and sunshiny singer Debbie Gibson hadn't been dating the guy who produced the new album by the long-running California punk band The Circle Jerks. The two parties surely would never have met. As it happened, though, they not only met, but Gibson wound up doing backing vocals on one track of the album, a cover of an old Soft Boys tune called I Want to Destroy You.
The reason we went for it was because we're fans of music. We listen to a lot of these bands. We've been purchasing records and singles and cassettes and reel-to-reel and 8-tracks and singles and whatever all these years from all these different labels, and we just figured, hey, why not us?
It was the 90s, and money in the major industry was flowing. I mean, it was like a gold rush back then.
There's all these millions and millions and millions and millions of dollars being tossed around to all of these bands, and we get a call from Roger Rogerson.
Basically, he was driving a truck in Idaho and had this epiphany that he wanted to come back to LA and be a rock star.
This was the year that, I believe that it might have been the year that punk broke.
He had, I remember, long pork chop sideburns, and in some ways it was the old Roger, and in some ways it was kind of like a Frankenstein.
All of a sudden there's this band called Green Day, and Green Day has this album called Dookie that sells a zillion records.
He was actually super intense, kind of manic, calling everyone on the phone. We've got to get back together.
It's our time. It's our time. We get and say, okay, right. Well, maybe he's right. I mean, he sounded delusional, but you know, maybe he was right.
The original Circle Jerks were going to get back together. We were going to write some songs. We were going to record some songs. We were going to pass out our demo. We were going to get millions and millions of dollars, and we were going to be as big as Nirvana.
I said, let's all get together just for fun and do another jam session like the old days. And it was all set, and everybody showed up, and it was like, well, where's Roger? An hour goes by, and 2 hours go by, and it's like, well, this is really weird. This was the guy that was calling. This was the guy that wanted to do this.
It's like, oh, typical Roger, doesn't show up. And we get a call the next day from somebody, like a roommate is, saying that he, took a lethal dose of 2 different types of drugs and was dead.
Apparently he just mixed himself up a really juicy combo platter of see you later.
That was it for Roger. Done. Like Tuinol, Valium, Coke.
And it was just like he called to say, hey, checking in to say, hey, now I'm going, see you later.
I guess none of that drug stuff ever, and suicide or overdose just never really makes sense, so that was it.
The architect of murder gets top billing. Yet another victim, another slain. Sirens, flashing lights, police line. Cannot cross, right on the sidewalk. Paramedics on the scene. Up pulls the corner stuck. Heard someone say, that poor sucker's right out of luck. Casualty vampires.
trying to write this record for Mercury, and I'd be in and out. So the band would get frustrated. I'm like, well, we'll have Dick Stenny from the Weirdos sit in and help out and just play the part of Greg. It was just not the whole unity of us all together in one place, all focused just on Circle Jerks. And the album kind of sounds like that.
The Circle Jerks made an album that probably shouldn't have been made for a major label.
I was in Bad Religion, and we were having our major label success, the 3 minutes of that. And there was some tension between the Circle Jerks and myself because it was really hard to juggle the two bands.
Bad Religion was always sort of a thorn in Keith's side because of their schedule, their touring schedule.
I showed up at Soundcheck in Detroit and said, "This is my last show. It's not fun anymore. I'm going home."
Not only that, but you know, Keith Clark's tax schedule, we couldn't tour in spring.
I had to make a choice of struggle with the band that already struggled for 10 years to get to a certain point and then break apart and start all over.
Xander had run off and he'd started a band with a guy from Steel Eye Span and I guess a Pogue, or a couple of Pogues and a couple of actors. They got signed to a major label.
And I felt guilty. I felt I had let some of my best friends of all times, people I've known for all my young teenhood and adult life, down.
You know, when you're around people for as long as we've been around each other, all sorts of resentments start to pop up, and it's just not healthy.
It's just tough, like, you know, getting into a room with that amount of history and the amount of you know, baggage and damage.
Every night it would be so great. I'd never ever have to masturbate. My parents would be so glad they wouldn't think their boys are back. You go upstairs and we'll go to bed.
This guy wanted the Circle Jerks to come over and do like a full-blown European tour.
After long years of, you know, everybody going their different ways, Keith had moved out of state for a while, and he, you know, calls up and is like, maybe we should get the band back together, man.
I contacted Greg and said, look, let's put the band back together. Let's put all of our differences aside, and let's do this again, and let's do it for real.
Well, the latter years were, I think, based on a renewed interest by Keith. He had a sort of renewed lust for life after getting diabetes and getting sick.
I was in the process of leaving this earth and, you know, going to another planet, you know, jumping on a flying saucer or whatever, going someplace else.
It's no wonder that he would start to appreciate the things in his life a little bit more and want to do things.
And remember, this is a party. No fighting, no fucking around. Everything will be cool. Make friends. Jump around, get loose. Fuck, smoke, drink, but no fighting. Let's leave that to our government and all the people they send elsewhere. All wound up! All wound up! Ready to go! Just the path! On the path! Take you down! All wound up! Ready to go! All wound up! Ready to go! I'm your brother!
Keith wanted to clear the decks and bring in a new drummer.
I was a little apprehensive because, you know, Keith brought in a drummer that I never heard of.
Keith Clark was out, and Kevin Fitzgerald was in.
Reluctantly, me and Sandra were like, okay, we'll give it a shot.
He more modeled himself after, like, the Lucky years, you know, real super, like, ramshackle and aggressive, angry drumming.
So Kevin comes in, he knows the whole set, he just, like, kicks ass, he brings this new fire and intensity, and I was convinced that, you know, yeah, we got a shot.
We basically got back together, and we were, I would say, more of a revival band, going around doing mostly songs from the first 3 records.
We've been fortunate enough to be able to get away with doing that year after year after year because we built a really great fan base.
You know, cashing in on our legacy, cashing in on our name and our logo and stuff, and trying to ride that out.
You know, we were capable of pulling into a town and pulling anywhere between 500 to 2,000 people. The Circle Jerks, for years and years and years, was like, that was all I really knew. Granted, we weren't one of these overly creative bands.
I didn't particularly enjoy the fact that we weren't producing new material.
It took a lot of prodding and a lot of people pushing us and telling us what to do to get to the point where we would record a record, and we were close to recording our first record in like 14 years.
With this guy, Dimitri, sort of as an intermediary.
I think Keith is one of the best, if not the best, punk rock singer, frontman ever, but I think he's a little insecure, and every time it came to writing and recording, he would freak.
Thinking to myself, well, what are we? Faith Hill? Has it gotten to the point where we need outside writers to come in and write a Circle Jerks record for us?
We were actually being creative. We had somebody that was cracking the whip. We had somebody that said, okay, here's your schedule. We have to have this done because one of the other guys is going off for 3 months with one of the other bands that he plays in.
Maybe there was still that animosity. Maybe somewhere everybody knew deep down inside of their head that it couldn't be full time because I still was in Bad Religion.
That instead of going in and writing lyrics to the music that the Circle Jerks had come up with, Dimitri and Keith wrote an off record.
It was really frustrating, especially for me. Keith, I think everybody was frustrated, all for different reasons.
Dimitri was fired as our handler and producer, and Keith was very, very upset.
And when they fired him, they fired any of my wanting to make a Circle Jerks record. It went right out the window.
I know Keith always he always wanted to do something of his own. I think that was eating at him for years.
I have a new band with Stephen McDonald. This is very ironic, but it's also very full circle. See, we've gone back to the church. We've gone back to the basement in the church.
he's happy doing what he's doing. He's supportive of me doing what I'm doing, and that I should continue to do what I'm doing, and not wait for the Circle Jerks to do anything. No shows, no new record. Basically, everybody's moving on.
I feel very fortunate to have been a part of kind of history in a way, you know. I was there in the very beginning with a couple of big bands, you know, Black Flag, Second Trust, you know, the Circle Jerks, and then all the other bands in that time period. And, you know, that was a movement that probably will never happen again.
We did whatever we had to. We had to, you know, fight to get gigs in spite of having like a groundswell of support and people that wanted to see the shows. There were no venues. Most of the clubs boycotted this kind of stuff, so it had to find its own way.
You might remember a character in sports, Bo Jackson. He thought he could play baseball and football. Bo knows. What happened to Bo? He couldn't do it. Couldn't handle it. Got injured. Ruined his career. He couldn't play either one. That happened to me.
I will say that I've closed the door, but I've not locked the door. I'm not going to walk away from something that I helped start.
Legends are not based on being active all the time. Legends are based on their absence. So what a legend does is they do something great, and then they disappear mysteriously for a while, and then come back or die, but legends are based on their absence. So it's no wonder that the Circle Jerks have legendary status.
You can say whatever you want. Actually, my first question to you was have a seat, make yourself comfortable.
Yeah.
How long have you been a drummer?
Are you recording?
Yeah.
Look at me, not in here, look at me,
okay.
And we'll just sort of go. And then basically, tell me how you came to the Circle Jerks.
Sure. In the summer of 1980, I was roadieing for the Teen Idols. We went from Washington, D.C. all the way out to California. They had shows in Los Angeles and San Francisco. We went up to San Francisco and we were camping out at Target Video. And someone points over and says, you know, that's Keith Morris. And me and the Teen Idols guys were standing there like, Keith Morris, like the Black Flag guy?
Introduce yourself.
My name's Mark Vidal, aliasly known as Earl Liberty. I mean, LA was the same. It just was. And, you know, when we came out, people came out, and it it was great. It was, we got a really good, we had a really good rapport with the people who came out and saw us.
Like to tell the true story
Yeah.
without really no heroes. I mean, everyone is both. We're
Yeah.
People are
Everyone's
human.
the villain, everyone's the hero. That's too,
Yeah.
Shut the dog up.
And we're rolling. Take 2 of the Keith Morris interview. For my
So
Life
you
as a
still
Jerk.
have stuff left over from the first time we tried doing
I
this?
haven't looked at it. I don't even know if there's anything usable in there. But
Well, we're not too far from the sheriff's station, so
we're right
hopefully-
across the street from the Starwood.
Hopefully, we'll have some emergency situations where we will be interrupted by loud, noisy sirens.
It's incense around every day.
Beverly Hills, Century City, everything so nice and pretty, and all the people look the same, but don't they know they're fucking lame? There she goes, baby suit, redneck pants, cowboy boots. I don't know what to do. I don't know what to do. I don't have to move from Beverly Hills, Century City, everything so nice and pretty.